Good evening, everyone. I'm Joel Blackford. This is Blackford Talks Prophecy. And we have a guest tonight, Caleb Wilson. He is from Nebraska and he's a Torah person. And he has his own show too. Caleb, introduce yourself to everybody and tell them who and what you are.
Shalom, everybody. My name is Caleb D. Wilson. I am a Messianic Judaism theologian on YouTube. I run a couple channels called Messianic Monday and Let's Talk About It, where I basically talk about a Jewish Messiah, Jesus, and why it's important to understand his Jewish context and understand the Jewish elements of our faith.
Oh, okay. And so and so what is your channel called then?
So my channel is called. Listen, I said channels. What I really meant to say was a series on my channel. I run a series called Messianic Mondays, where I talk about Messianic Jewish principles, talking about why it's important to understand Jesus within a Jewish context. Then I run a series called Let's Talk About It, where I invite theological content creators to come on the channel to have a conversation. And if they don't come on the channel, usually I use them as an object lesson to talk about their theology and whether it's right or wrong. So,
And now the reason why I found you was that you either had a debate or a discussion with a Rabbi Brian from the East Coast, and that was a wonderful discussion, but unfortunately it was taken down, I think, right?
so I took that video down,
Okay.
and I have no problem explaining why. It's because when you're in this field of work where I am actively trying to advocate for a return to Judaism, it's not a we have to be honest. I'm trying to get people to come back to Judaism. And what the issue was with Rabbi Brian um, is that he conflates Christianity with Judaism, and he even says something like, "You we revert." I'm going to misquote him here, but essentially, whatever he said, it made an implication. It was something like the return, the Christianity of the future is Messianic Judaism. I think it was something like that tweeted, and that especially as a Jew and a Jewish rabbi, we have to be honest that we're trying to return to Judaism. We're trying to return back to the ancient paths of the Jewish people. And so we have to look, I'm a kind of appreciates when people are straightforward and honest. And so I just tell people, hey, I have no issue with Christians. I love Christians, and I'm not here to say Christians are the problem, because they're not the problem in any capacity. But the theology that comes from Christianity is fundamentally the problem. And so what I try to do is I try to be honest about, yes, we need to return to the ancient paths, and that's we sell ourselves short if we try to uh, suggest that Christianity is a form of Messianic Judaism, because it's not.
There are differences, no doubt about that. We are not under the law, antinomian, pronomian, things like that. So many people argue that, and you believe that the law is not a burden, right?
Do I not believe that the law is a burden? Well, there's a I think you have to be more specific. What kind of law we're talking, like the Mosaic law?
Yeah, Mosaic. It's light and
Okay.
easy. I mean, it's easy to keep Sabbath, right?
So when we're talking about, is it easy to keep? That's a fascinating question, because I don't know if I would ever say it's easy, because in the sense of every day you have to wake up and choose it, regardless of the circumstances in your life. I can tell you this though, the more that I adopt the rituals in my life, I've found a lot more freedom. I have found myself I find myself even more. I find peace and greater shalom in the sense of uh, and understanding why they're there is such a beautiful thing to me. And so I would say that my life there's definitely life gets easier, but we live in a broken world where we have to dispense with the people around us, and they have their own demons that are rattling them, and it's where we will always have to dispense with that until Jesus comes and sets everything right.
So there's a new study out. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to clip it, but it basically says that people that keep Sabbath have a relaxed day, but then also what occurs is that it straightens out their lives in terms of timing, and it seems to be like almost written on their hearts that when they finally start taking a day off per week, especially the Sabbath, they just feel better. They feel aligned. They feel healthier in many ways. Would you say that's the case with your life?
I think ultimately the goal is we want to return back to Eden, return back to the ways, the ancient paths that were laid before us at the beginning of the world. And I would say that as I draw nearer to that, I definitely find myself feeling like I'm being the person I was meant to be and doing what I'm supposed to do. And I could have a what would you say? Bad circumstances on a day, but if I can say, I don't think any day is a bad day. I don't think any day is ever bad if you get to wake up and experience this. So, for example, I don't know. I'm sure you might know the Modeh Ani, Joel, or at least aware of that's a prayer. But I pray that prayer every morning, and every morning we say, "Grateful I am before you, God, King living and enduring, for you have returned to me my soul and graciousness, and great is your faithfulness." And what I love is that I get to wake up and I say, I didn't have to be here today. I could have, like, Hashem takes our souls if he chooses, and he gives our souls back if he chooses. So the opportunity to live and experience life is a gift. So I'm kind of rambling. I don't know if that's answering your question.
That works. That works just fine. So you are a disciple of Doran Katz from Kiwi land, from New Zealand. Would you describe your relationship with him? How did you find him?
Oh man, how did I find Darren? Well, when I found Darren, I wasn't looking for Darren, but I was looking for something real because I had spent 25 years in Protestant Christianity, and I think it's important to explain to people for context, when I look back at my times in Protestant Christianity, I don't look at it through a vengeful, hateful attitude. Ironically, is what happened in my time as a Christian brought me to Messianic Judaism. And so, but the thing is that it was incomplete. So I had spent 6 months as a worship leader, and once again, like I would never take that. I'm thankful for those experiences because they taught me a lot. In a process, what it taught me was how incomplete I feel and how incomplete I feel with the people that were around me. I just wanted more. Okay, so I had a friend. He's a writer actually for Emissary Publishing, and he's written a couple books with Darren Katz. I might have to show that book on here, but this man was posting these things about I can't remember what it was, but I remember we had a conversation over Facebook, and I was like, we need to go back to the early church. You've probably heard that a million times. We need to go back to the early church. Like, we need to go back to the way things were, like how the disciples were sharing everything with each other. And I just remember it was like the sky fell or something when he dropped this line of saying, "Well, did you know that there was no early church in the sense that you understand it, but these were Jews practicing Jewish concepts, practicing Judaism?" I was like, okay, that's interesting. Where would I learn more about this? And so was recommended a book by D.T. Lancaster. I think it's called uh, what is it called? I think I have the book over here. No, I don't have that book over here. A Restoration. Now I remember. It was Restoration by D.T. Lancaster from First Fruits of Zion. And so I read that book, and I was posting this stuff online. The things I was learning, I was like, whoa, like this is a Jewish faith. And so then Paul one day dropped this message to me. Hey, I have this Jewish rabbi. You want to meet him? It's like, why the heck not? I was like, I've done so many things, and I've looked in so many places. You know what, Jewish rabbi? What do you got? You got something better? So I took a listen, and what I appreciated when I first met Darren was his straightforward honesty. He said, "This is what I'm about. This is what I teach. I let people hold me accountable. And if you are going to come with an arrogant attitude, I'm going to find a way to push you out the door." That was my introduction to Darren. And it was like, thank you for your straightforward honesty. And I was like, I don't fully understand everything you are saying on all this weird Jewish stuff, but why don't I give it a try? And so that is essentially what got me into being a disciple with Darren.
Now, keep in mind, people, that Darren, or Doron, you can call it either way, is an Orthodox rabbi that was trained in the system, and then he flipped over to Yeshua. So he kept everything that he had always learned and just added Yeshua into it. And so for Caleb, this is kind of wonderful because it's easy to see the first century aspects in Doron or Darren, because he's teaching about those things. He's connecting the dots that we wouldn't always see. Right, Caleb?
Right. Do you mind setting the picture to me real fast? I just want to show people this.
Yeah, sure. Well, there we go. Okay.
This is Jesus in Context, written by my friends Doran Katz and Paul Edwards. This book is really, really great. It's on Amazon. I think Barnes and Nobles is on. Jesus in Context: Why a Jewish Jesus Matters to Christian Believers. This book is one of my favorite books I've ever picked up. I'll show you one page just to get in your mind how cool this book is. So here it shows you Christian interpretations. Well, I can't read backwards. We've heard in Jewish interpretation. So they have columns for this stuff. And I really love the columns in this book. And it really just shows you the ways that Christianity has interpreted things and how it differs from Jewish interpretation. So I'm not sponsored. I'm not paid to promote this, but I really look, and for my friends, I really recommend you buy this book. It's on Amazon. So.
And then, unfortunately, oh goodness, I'm having problems with my mouse now. Give me a second here, and I'll get the screen back. Okay, there we go. I thought that I had my Stern copy handy, but I don't. Maybe I threw it someplace. The point is that for me, what changed my life during 2006 through 2008 was looking at David Stern's commentary on the Jewish New Testament, And so he would call it the Brit Hadashah. And so I was looking for what's the thought behind the thought, What were the people, what was Peter thinking about? What was Paul thinking about? What was Yeshua talking about? And rather than going to the standard Christian commentaries, I was bored with them. It wasn't working for me. In my particular life, I had gone through some demonic attacks and overt. I mean, we're talking in your face demons. And so I knew that my standard United Methodist Christianity wasn't going to work. I had to get back to the basics, and I had to learn. Vince Lombardi would say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Okay, and so for you people, this is a Torah, and it's my chumash. And so at some point in time, you learn that this is God the Father, this is Yeshua the Son, this is His Spirit, and you learn some spiritual warfare. But you really, when you get back to the basics, you can handle the bad news of the world a lot better, if you know what I mean, Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely. What I've learned is that perspective really is everything. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all, I don't know, the relationships, connections, but you can only go as far as the vision that you actually have for that. And what I found is wisdom. I've started to relate to where it says in Proverbs that wisdom is crying out like a woman, crying out for whoever to. And I tell you what, the more wisdom you acquire, the more you can settle into the person you were supposed to be. So absolutely, vision everything.
And so your moment was finding Doron Katz, which helps you to get back to the basics, get back to the first century thought. My moment was David Stern. I never met him. He was having some health issues, but you mentioned D. Thomas Lancaster just a few seconds ago. He's a buddy of mine from First Fruits of Zion, and I attended his place in Hudson, Wisconsin for a number of years, 6, 7 years. And Beth Emanuel. Then I started my Beth Hesed in St. Paul as a mirror image of what they were doing. Just because I wanted to be different, I threw in eschatology, so a little bit more charismata and a lot more eschatology. And of course, it failed during COVID, but everybody had issues during COVID. So the main thing is for you, faith was interesting for years there, for 25 years. But then as you were searching for deeper understanding, you found Doron, and now you're realizing this is what I want. This is how I feel comfortable, right?
I think what it comes down to is, because I've gone through so many challenging experiences, and what it came down to has always been, what are my principles? And does the truth matter? And I made a decision a long time ago to say, no matter what happens, no matter what persecution comes my way, no matter how many trolls I get every single day telling me that I'm some Satanist or some, well, whatever. You can fill the boxes. What I have chosen is I enjoy the truth. I live for the truth. And I think that there's something so satisfying. You discover every day more of how life works and how you're supposed to get on board with the program.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. It's like maybe there's a certain point in your life where you're just searching. Yours was, more recently here. Mine was about 20 years ago, and you need more, and it's time to change your life a little bit. Sometimes, life punches you in the nose, and you have to get up, wipe your nose off again, and get back into it. But I find that with the Torah, I feel more comfortable in what's going on in the world. As an eschatologist, to be honest with you people, eschatology is bleak right now because the world is not looking pretty. And so we know Yeshua is going to return at some point in time, but if you don't have a positive attitude about it, about life and whatever else, oh my goodness, you could get depressed so quickly right now. So with Torah, it centers you one time a week, at least on Sabbath, but also it gives you, the opportunity to study and do other things and work with Doron. And it really helps fill your soul, that you need a vacuum. It fills you, right, Caleb?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, like I said, it's just the more you can understand, because the most important thing is, as believers, like, shouldn't we care about what the truth is about Jesus? Shouldn't we care about the context within the gospel? Shouldn't we care to actually produce an authentic Jesus? And if you settle that in your mind, it will awaken you to so many realities that you can relate to Jesus and have further understanding of why things happen the way they do and what our goal is being here on this earth. So absolutely.
All right. Now the next section of our video tonight is talking about Qumran, the Essenes. And so I've always thought that these were the great guys, but I have friends that say, no, 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 no. Qumran, that's where all the evil people went. And they brought their wild theories up there and their calendars and everything else. And so I'm looking for people like Caleb that believe the Essenes were doing a good job. If you read Luke 21, it says, when times get bad, leave. Well, where would you go to? Well, why not go to the Essene camp where you have friends up there and survive a little bit longer, so to speak. And so, Caleb, would you describe a little bit about the Essene community, about Qumran, and just give us something positive about what they've done and what they did?
Absolutely. So I think I'll just reiterate my one of the last things I said is that understanding Jesus in context, ironically, that's the title of the book I just told you about. Understanding Jesus context is absolutely everything. And so when I look at the topic of the Essenes, there's a lot of fascinating information about the Essenes. I could probably spend a long time talking about every single thing that I understand about the Essenes, but to you, why you have to understand the Essenes, and that understanding the Essenes does give us an insight into the context that Jesus was in. So one of the things that we have to do is ask the question, who are the Essenes? But we also have to ask the question, why are the Essenes? So what we know is that there's a fallout that happens during Hanukkah. The Maccabees take over and they rule Jerusalem. So the Maccabees were Levites. They were, of course, the priestly tribe. And so once they took over Jerusalem, this was quickly apparent to be a problem because they're not from the tribe of Judah. They have no authority to rule Jerusalem, to rule the nations, the nation of Israel. So during this time, the Sadducees and the Pharisees were in existence, and they were killing each other. There was bloodshed happening. And so the Romans took over, and they saw that this bloodshed between the Sadducees and the Pharisees existed. The Romans wanted to, of course, find a way to quell some of this bloodshed. So what they did is They gave the Sadducees the authority over the temple. Now, why did they do that? Because the Sadducees were Hellenized Jews. They were Greek-loving Jews, and many of them had reversed their circumcision. So what we know is that they were preferential to the Greek cultures that had been prevalent when the Greeks took over. So these people, many of the Sadducees were corrupt. And so it made sense for the Romans to give this power over to the Sadducees. And the Pharisees weren't much of a help either, because they were considered the seeker of smooth things. So the Pharisees often found crafty methods of getting themselves out of observing the Torah. In fact, I believe it was, what was it, Hillel? Or I forget who was at one time was leading the group of Pharisees, but he had even suggested in part of the Torah where it says you can divorce your wife if you see an unseemly manner. He had even suggested, I think this is in the Mishnah, that you can divorce your wife if she burns her food. So there was some really obnoxiously crazy ways that they were trying to get out of these obligations. So a group of Levites, they were mostly Levites, saw this corruption happening. And they rejected these sects. And they clung on to the words of the prophet Isaiah in chapter 40, where he says, "A voice cries out in the wilderness." And they took it literally, and that's where they headed. This group was the Essenes. The Essenes were very zealous. They were committed to staying ritually pure. So most of the Essenes committed to celibacy and engaged in the mikveh daily. So in contrast to the bloodshed of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they were pacifists and preferred to avoid violence. Let me read you a couple things that Pliny the Elder wrote about the Essenes.
Sure, great.
Quote, "On the west side of the Dead Sea, but out of range of the noxious exhalations of the coast, is the solitary tribe of the Essenes, which is remarkable beyond all the other tribes of the whole world, as it has no women and has renounced all sexual desire, has no money, and has only palm trees for company. By day, the throng of refugees is recruited to an equal number by numerous accessions of persons tired of life and driven there by the waves of fortune to adopt their manners. Thus, through thousands of ages, a race in which no one is born lives on forever." Excuse me. "So prolific for their advantage is other men's weariness of life. Lying below the Essenes was formerly the town of En-Gedi." Excuse me, sorry. "Second only to Jerusalem in the fertility of its land and its groves of palm trees, but now like Jerusalem, a heap of ashes," unquote. So much of this information I'm actually providing to you, I'm gonna show you guys another book. This is Jesus and the Dead Sea
Let me flip
Scrolls.
it back here again. There you go. Okay, yep, Jesus and the
Oh,
Dead Sea Scrolls.
My bad.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, so this is Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Excuse me, sorry. Should have grabbed some more water. Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls by John Bergsma. This is a Christian author, and he really shows you how to connect the Dead Sea Scrolls to much of the things that were going, and helps contextualize some of the story within the story excuse me, of Jesus's Jesus' story. So
Do you want to
I
grab
wanted
some
to take
water? Do you want to grab some water and I'll just
sure,
cover for you for a couple of minutes while you run off and get your water?
sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So Caleb's going to run and get water. I'm going to describe the situation. You've got the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and then you've got the goat that's brought out. And according to Danny the Digger, he's brought out to Al Muntar, which is Mount Azazel. And you can see the little map there. You can see the Azazel written there. And so, according to what I believe, there's a straight shot to Qumran. Where you can walk the back ways. But you wouldn't want to bring, your car or anything like that. But you can run around. It's a good long trip from Azazel to Qumran. The main thing is Azazel makes sense in terms of, being about 10-ish miles away from Jerusalem, far enough away. So that would be the Yom Kippur service. And the goat would be brought out there, and he's back. And yeah, you were suffering, and I get thirsty too. So the main thing is there's Qumran down below. And so, it's just a very easy shot for people to get there. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on the earth. My weird theory is that you have creatures, fallen angels, so to speak, buried in this region here, probably within this circle. And that would be based on First Enoch, say chapter 6 through 18 and 20. So anyway, are you ready to go, Caleb? Are you ready to talk to us again?
The flesh is willing, Joel, but the throat is weak, apparently. No, I should be good.
Okay, good. So
um,
tell us more about the Essenes and Qumran and that life. I didn't realize that it was just men. That's intriguing, and that they were celibate too. Wow.
well, I'm going to show you some more things. Well, it wasn't everyone who was celibate, but yes, they were committed to being ritually pure. That was one of the primary characteristics of the Essenes. Now, with that in mind, let me add this to the Gospels. So I'm going to pull up Luke chapter 22, and we're going to start in verse 7. And I'm reading from the English Standard Version. Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. So Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat it." Then they said to him, "Where will you have us prepare it?" He said to them, "Behold, when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house that he enters, and tell the master of the house, the teacher says to you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room furnished. Prepare it there." Okay, so to the modern, what would you say, Christian understanding, well, we would easily gloss over some of these things. We would say, "Oh, interesting. Okay, just a man carrying a jar of water, and this room is furnished." But what we know is that carrying a jar of water in Jewish times, considered a woman's work. So it was considered something for a woman to do. So men did not carry jars of water. The Essenes, being mostly celibate, of course, had to pick up all of those other tasks. So this is a strong indication, being in Jerusalem, that this is an Essene, because he's doing a woman's work. And then there's even more evidence to suggest he's an Essene, because there's a guest room that is already furnished. Now, the Essenes were incredibly hospitable. They were over frequently to come and stay the night with them. So they always had a room prepared for somebody to come in be with them. So these couple things seem to indicate a strong possibility that this was an Essene. Now let's go to Mark. We're going to go to Mark 14. Take another swig of water. Mark 14, we're going to go to verse 48.
Ready.
Let me see. Oh, that might not be the scripture I was trying to find. Let me see. All right, I meant to say verse 51.
Later. Yeah, there you go.
And a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body, and they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. And so this is right after a situation where someone to come and attack Jesus. And now there's a tradition that John Mark is writing himself into the story here. Now, we also can see that there's a man with a linen cloth who leaves this linen cloth. Okay. So, a couple things. Linen was not a traditionally seen garment in Jerusalem at that time. It was considered a luxurious item. But this is also there's a little bit of contradiction, because while this fabric is luxurious, this man is wearing just one garment of linen. The Indians only wore a piece of linen around them, and actually at Qumran they found a lot of linen garments like these. So they considered it themselves in a state of poverty to await for the Messiah of Aaron in Israel. So this is another indicator that this person, which it says John Mark, is an Essenes, which means John Mark is potentially an Essene. Now, in Acts 12:12, there's another indication that supports this theory, is that John Mark's mother owns a house that many people gathered to pray over. In fact, there's a tradition that John Mark's mother owned the house that they had the Passover, or most people understand the Last Supper. So, if we can, the evidence seems to just suggest, if we tie that all together, that John and that Jesus had the Passover in an Essene house, which means there was also an Essene quarter in Jerusalem at that time. So what's fascinating is that we can see that if that's true, which it seems to be a strong case, Jesus, it would make sense, because Jesus at the time had issues with, or actually not Jesus, really. Well, he probably had issues with them, but more of the Pharisees and Sadducees probably had the bigger issue because they wanted to kill him. Knowing that the Essenes were pacifists and also saw the corruption happening in the temple, Jesus could have definitely at times sided with them and shared some ideological perspective with them. So Jesus could have definitely spent the Last Supper, or the Passover, in the Essene quarter.
I like that. Yes, I can see that very easily, Caleb. There you are. So the bottom line is, let me read a couple of verses from Revelation just to give people perspective on linen. So I'm going to start in chapter 19, and then I'll start in 6. Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like the sound of many waters, like the sound of mighty thunder peals, crying out, Hallelujah! For the Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. And how has she made herself ready? To her has been granted to be clothed in fine linen, bright and pure, for fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. That's the kaiomata in the Greek. And what should be thought of is the kaiomata is, it goes back to the Hebrew as hook, and hook would be something that you do just because you're supposed to do it. It's like you don't touch the stove when you're a kid because it burns you. Well, the same thing with the kayomata and hook, meaning you keep the Shabbat because you're told to keep the Shabbat. You keep you don't sleep with your mother because you know it's wrong. I mean, there's just lots of things within the Torah and the Bible where you just know it's wrong, so don't do it. And so the bottom line is that the white linen is something that would be associated with the return of Yeshua and would be considered righteous. The high priest is supposed to wear linen on Yom Kippur. And as I'm showing you in the picture, there's the connection between Jerusalem, Azazel, and that location for Yom Kippur where they walk the goat out, and then Qumran right down the road. You it's just interesting how it all fits together into the Yom Kippur story. Any thoughts, Caleb?
No, I think I was looking through some of the notes that I had, so I didn't fully pick up everything that you said. But from the sound of it, it sounded like a lot of the things you said were correct.
Yes. So it seems as though they understood the concept of the white linen, bright, clean, for a wedding. If Yeshua was going to come back, and in some ways, they thought the wedding was going to be sooner than 2,000 years. They literally thought this could happen quickly, right, Caleb?
The sages actually suggest that every generation has had the opportunity to bring Messiah down, and the Essenes were looking for a Messiah of Aaron and Messiah of Israel. Now, ironically, we had you had me on, what was it, a couple months ago to talk about Melchizedek and how Jesus is a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Now, that's what I propose to you, Joel, is that that's not supposed to be literal. That Jesus is literally, there's a literal priesthood of Melchizedek, but that Jesus, it's a remez essentially of Jesus is a priest in heaven, not having to any affiliation with a lineage like the Levitical priesthood, and that he is a priest in his own order. And there's also forget if it's a drash of Melchizedek, where there's a legend that he didn't have a father and mother.
Right.
So the Essenes were so with that in mind, Jesus is definitely a Messiah as a priest, but also a Messiah of Israel.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick where it says it. I'm in Genesis 14, Caleb, and so what I'm trying to do is mention that the Melchizedek priesthood is eternal. It goes on forever. It's olam, we would call it. I think it's a huk olam, but anyway, it is an eternal priesthood, and Hebrews talks about that again too. But then also we see that God gives the priesthood to Zadok as an eternal priesthood also. And so there's the both of them. And so I would argue, and maybe you agree, maybe not, that the Zadok people are up in Qumran. Would that be the case?
Well, I think that they were trying to associate themselves with Zadok, and actually that was part of try to assume that they had the lineage to Zadok, and that was part of well, really the problem was one, they were corrupt and preferential to the Greek ways, but no, there was Levites that were definitely in Qumran trying to associate themselves with the Zadok lineage.
So there would have been both up there. There would have been some Melchizedek type people and some Zadok people. They were generally associating together somehow in their communal life, right?
Well, I mean, so there's documents about the Melchizedek. That's one of the documents they found in Qumran, and so they do mention Melchizedek very often. But when Paul talks about, oh, well, I say it's Paul. We don't know if it's actually Paul.
Yeah, we don't know about Hebrews, do we? No.
But what the writer in Hebrews is suggesting, simply making a metaphor of what Melchizedek represents, which is a priest in an order that doesn't require a lineage, and it's in the spiritual, the real temple, which is so. I would definitely not push that metaphor any further than that.
And we should probably explain to people that Melchi would be like king, and then Zadok would be a righteous. So he's a king of righteousness, but he's also a priest. And so God gives that declaration in, I want to say, Genesis 14. It doesn't matter. But anyway, but then he comes back, and Phineas spears the two people that are cohabiting in the camp, and he is given the eternal priesthood too. So the discussion that we had a few months ago was they're both co-eternal, and they have to work well with each other. One is probably more king-like with Yeshua, but then there is those Zadok people that are going to be doing the ministrations in, say, Ezekiel 40 through 48. Any comments on that?
No, I would no, I would agree with everything you said.
Okay, all right. So the bottom line is they are sitting in, they have some people in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is getting pretty scary by, after Yeshua dies and resurrects. So, and they were warned, as soon as things got hairy, get out of Dodge and go to some location. It looks like they went to Qumran, they went to other places, and then eventually they had to leave those places too. So when do you think they left Qumran?
That's a good question. I wouldn't know when they left Qumran. But I would think that it would be probably sometime after the fallout of the temple. But I wouldn't know for sure though.
Why am I blanking on the name of Masada? Rather the location of Masada, but basically that occurred 72, 73. So the temple, we believe, fell on Av 9 of 70 Common Era, and then Masada would have fallen by 72 to 73. Would that make sense to you?
So Masada, that's the term you're referring to, the fallout of the temple.
Yeah, that some people
70
went
AD?
there. Yeah, in 70 AD, and then they were captured and killed at some point. Well, they all died, from Masada. Do you remember where Masada is in the map that I'm showing?
I am not familiar with where Masada is on this map.
All right, that's fine. So the bottom line is they went to different places. you would argue that the good guys that are wearing linen, and linen is important in terms of priestly functions and things like that, and holiness, obviously, too, were in Qumran, and they probably went back and forth to Jerusalem at times. And that seems to be the case. I mean, where do these prophets come from, say, during the quiet years after Nehemiah and Ezra's time frame, where you really don't have a lot of prophecy being spoken, but many things are occurring. I mean, you go from Babylon to Medo-Persia to Greece to Rome very quickly, and that's all prophesied in Daniel. So you would assume that as those things are occurring, the Qumran was being built up during that time frame, right?
So my understanding is that Qumran comes right after Hanukkah, with the fallout of the bloodshed of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Once the Sadducees are in place with authority over the temple, the Essenes see that they're corrupt and are not handling things the way they should be. So that's essentially the birthplace, you could say, of when they turn to Isaiah and see that to make way for the Messiah in the wilderness.
And then you would argue that they would come back to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the festivals: Passover, Shavuot, and then Sukkot. Right?
I don't see any evidence that would suggest otherwise. I would think that they would want to hold to that obligation.
It is a command, and it sounds like they're righteous people, so that they would adhere to the command. So it's very interesting. So, anything else that we would want to know about that Essene community? Anything else that's just intriguing that people should maybe pick up a book and read about?
I did an episode couple months, or that was a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, about a supposed contradiction in the Bible. So there was a contradiction that apparently it made a man renounce his faith. I believe that man was Bart Ehrman. And so one of the contradictions was in I think it's Mark, it says they're going to prepare the Passover in 6 days, and then in John they're going to prepare the Passover in 2 days. And so to the uneducated, we could say, person reading the scripture, you pick this up and say, well, that's a contradiction. You guys are talking from 2 different calendars, you're referring to this different timelines, and the timelines don't add up. So there must be an inconsistency within the scripture. What we've discovered when we found the Dead Sea Scrolls is that, excuse me, the Essenes had been adopting a calendar that was different to the calendar that the Sadducees and the Pharisees put up in the temple. And so they had different Passover times. In fact, I think it's in Luke. Luke makes this really rhetorical statement in many times where he says, the Passover of the Jews, we're going to celebrate the Passover of the Jews. And really what he means by Jews, he actually means the Judeans. So he's referring to, he's not making a redundant statement, because you would think Passover is for Jews like fried chicken is for Kentucky, So what we're talking about is, what he's really trying to say is, I'm dating this according to a specific calendar of the Jews that set it up in the temple to have the Passover on a different day. And so what we see is the Passover, one of the Passovers on one of the calendars was supposed to fall on a Tuesday, and the other Passover is supposed to fall on our Tuesday night. And then we would see the other one will fall on a Saturday night. And what we see actually in the Gospels is there is a 4-day difference. And that would square up with the idea that there's no contradiction. It's that the Gospel writers wrote Passover to two timelines according to two different calendars in that time.
So let's talk about calendars. I have friends. I don't have the slide handy right now. It's too deep in my deck. But Monty Judah keeps the Zadok calendar, and Eddie Chumney does too. And by the way, pray for Eddie. He's recovering from a stroke. Wonderful guy. He's been on the show a few times. So then there are some other people too. And so, do you, Caleb, keep the Zadok calendar? And would you explain it if you do?
I have not studied the Zadok calendar, so I'm not sure what that document is.
Okay. So the Zadok calendar, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, is where you get to the vernal equinox of spring, and then you start to work off that date, basically the first Wednesday after that. And then you count 364 days, and then you add a weekend every seventh year. And it's so everything is always on the same day. Every Shabbat is obviously on the same day each week, but in terms of your big 7 festivals, they always match up on a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever it happens to be. And so that's the Zadok calendar. And so Monty loves that. Once again, Eddie Chumney loves that. Some other guys do too. I'm a sighted moon kind of a guy. So I look forward to, like right now, we're basically getting ready for Kislev. Okay. Should occur probably tomorrow. And I go to 2-3 different people, Deborah's Date Tree. Oh goodness, now I'm blanking on some of the other places I referred to. But we get excited about the new moon and we blow our shofars and have a good time. Is that kind of what you? Oh, you're probably more an Orthodox, so you're a calculated Hillel too guy, right?
um, you know, I don't even know what calendar I'm celebrating on. Maybe maybe I should go take a look at what I'm doing. I think I've just celebrated Passover according to what Rabbi Darren has reported. That's a good question. I should ask him what calendar do we follow, if because I wasn't even aware that we have different calendars. That the Jews are operating by different calendars. So that's a good question. Though I'll have to take a look at that.
So the main thing is Paul chides people saying, try not to fight over which day you celebrate and things like that. And I think that's the case. Let's get together and enjoy Passover together. And it might occur over 3 days. You never know. I mean, but yeah, many of my friends are sighted moon people, but we understand the Hillel too. And as running Beth Hesed over the years, I found that it was much easier to just calculate, because people would have to ask for a day off, and they didn't like wondering when the new moon will occur. And so I don't know. Sometimes you just do what you do and you reconcile it later on and try not to fight, right?
The end goal in anything we do is we want to pursue shalom. We want to pursue peace. And now we can't pursue peace while violating our principles. We can't achieve peace by fundamentally living a lie. But there's always going to be, what would you say, a certain amount of things you have to put up with in this life to get along with people and to make opportunities. For example, this maybe your viewers will be really interested when I talk about this. So I shot a video, an episode with Rabbi Darren. We called it Halloween Gospel. Now, most people, when they hear Halloween and gospel, they hear, what in the world is this, like strawberries and pickles, like things that don't go together? But we shot this episode. And I even told him that right at the beginning. I'm like, because he was the one who coined this idea. Let's shoot an episode about Halloween gospel. Really? Like, you're a rabbi? We're gonna talk about the gospel and Halloween? Like, what are you talking about? And what he said was so incredibly fascinating. I'm just gonna give you a little quick snippet. You should really, I really encourage you guys to watch this episode. It's called Caleb D. Wilson. But the little snippet of it is how do we look to the Satanists or the people who are really uh, like actively pushing against, I guess, the ways of God versus every ordinary average person, right? So we, one of these kids, some of these kids doing Halloween, all to them, all they're doing is just grabbing candy. Now, is that meaning to endorse the darker elements of Halloween? Absolutely not. We can't endorse um, things that highlight the darker parts of the story of the gospel. But like, there was a guy that my rabbi was telling me, or a kid that was dressed up like a vending machine. Like a vending machine is what they were dressed up like. And I just don't think it's reasonable to say that this kid is some satanic, horrible, uh, absolutely demonstrative person, all for just dressing up like a vending machine. I think that sounds hilarious to me. That sounds like this kid would have so much fun, like, and get so many comments on this ridiculous costume. It's important to understand what are the reasons people do things, and let people explain for themselves why they do things. And as long as it doesn't violate our principles, we should just keep the peace as much as we can.
Amen. I agree. Try to get along with your group. Um, Shirley mentioned it this way: the calendar is simple, starting each month with the sighting of the new moon, and then celebrate for keep the appointed times accordingly. And so she's doing that. She loves to blow the shofar, and it is kind of fun when you see the new moon to blow the shofar. And I agree with Shirley; it is special. So now we're moving forward into the next section, which is where we ask Caleb some questions about things, and he gives us some opinions. First of all, the two witnesses. Do you have any opinions of who you think the two witnesses might be?
I think that they're going to be Enoch and Elijah,
Interesting. Okay.
because those are the two people who have been taken up. And so my theory, I'm getting this actually really not my theory. I really just get it from Darren. This is Darren's theory, is that Enoch will be the spokesperson, because I think in Revelation, yeah, we have the two witnesses is what we're talking about. There's going to be a witness. I believe that Enoch is going to be a witness to the nations, and which makes sense because Enoch exists before the Jewish people come into being, where everybody had the uh, gospel, and Elijah will be a witness to the Jewish people. In fact, literally at Passover, we look outside to see if Elijah has come.
Sure. Put the
So
fourth cup out for Eliyahu. Sure.
exactly. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Okay. And then, oh goodness, there we go. Come on, mouse works. Okay. So we had a burning of a red heifer a few months ago, and my friend Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz wasn't allowed to view this, but he had thought that this cow had been disqualified. Then another person said, "Well, no, not really." So they went back and forth, where the Temple Institute said, "Yeah, this is a this is a disqualified red heifer." But then they came back, and Byron Stinson, who gave the cows to Israel, to the Temple Institute, said, "No, we used a perfect red heifer." And so, do you have any thoughts on the red heifer that they burned, or the red heifer process? Do you have any thoughts on it?
This is out my scope at the moment, but this is really fascinating. Um, I enjoy seeing the trials of the Levites coming together and trying to produce these rituals that haven't been done in thousands of years. And so I think it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.
So one reason why I love Doron is that he's actually a Levite. So that's rare. Okay. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I bump into Jews all the time. And now my Orthodox friends will claim this particular person is a Katz or is a Cohen or whatever else. And so he has certain rights to do, say, the Aaronic blessing and things like that. Doron has these rights and privileges. And that's exceptional, isn't it?
He's a son. From my understanding, I mean, yeah, he would have. He could. I mean, he has claim to be a priest in the temple, but from what his understanding is, he doesn't think that he would actually be offered the opportunity because, well, he's messianic rabbi, and of course, these I'm assuming most of these people are probably Orthodox Jews trying to bring it back. So my understanding is that he probably wouldn't be offered the opportunity by the Temple Institute.
No, he will not be. Oh goodness, we're going to have to jump into this for a little bit. Now, this is coming from the Essenes in terms of their writings, and this is from Mike Heiser, where I had showed you those slides before, where there's this weird location out there by the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point of the earth, where you could have this Tartarus from Second Peter 2:4, and giants in those cases, and watcher angels coming down to Mount Hermon. Now, some of this is biblical if you're reading between the lines. Some of it is just straight up First Enoch, but it's very interesting. You know, Heiser would say that the fallen angels came down, mated with human women per Genesis 6:4, and then when they died off, half of them would have been human of these Nephilim. Half would be human, and half would be fallen angel. And so that part can't die. So they become these. We call them ruach tameh. They are unclean spirits, evil spirits. Any thoughts on that, Caleb?
Well, my understanding is that when the Nephilim were created, this fundamentally changed their DNA structure and fundamentally made them non-human
Mm-hmm.
and nullify their opportunity to be to inherit any salvation. So, you know, one of the things that I'm curious about is, will we see giants again? Will we see the Nephilim come back
Yeah.
in the end times? That would be fascinating. But yeah, that's all. That's all I think I could offer.
Okay, that's fine. I'll tell everybody that Revelation chapter 9 has two versions of these creatures popping up and being released from their prisons. And Revelation 12 has the angels coming down from some part of heaven. And so Heiser, I just happened to be looking at this afternoon. And so it's just intriguing. Let me go to the next slide. And so basically, according to Heiser and a Qumran fragment, watchers had serpentine appearances. So they could look like fire, and in the Hebrew, we would call them seraphim, fire, seraphs. And so, or they could look like humans, or they could look like serpents. And so, of the fallen angels, there are these weird serpent sightings and other creatures that pop up every now and then, in UFOlogy and things like that. I would argue they're extra dimensional, but this is part of the Qumran fragments. You've never seen anything in your fragments that you've looked through, right? Anything like this?
I have not seen anything yet in any of those from what I've studied from the Qumran scrolls. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they had a serpentine appearance. I'm not here to suggest otherwise. I wouldn't say that it would put it past me.
Okay. And then now we're on to the next section, which is Pin the Tail on the Antichrist. It's a little game that we play, Pin the Tail on the Antichrist. Is Donald Trump the Antichrist?
That's a good question. So, what we do know is that the Antichrist is going to be a friend of Israel, and he is going to offer Israel peace. And then he will basically betray Israel. Um, you know, possibly. It's possible,
He is the
it's
peace president, isn't he?
well, he's what done the Abraham Accords at one point. He's at least at the time being, from what I can see, as a uninformed citizen, seems to still be quite positive for trying to stay allies with Israel. Um, and he's probably what the most powerful man on earth now. I would suggest. So
I
yeah, it's
agree.
possible.
Okay. All right. People call him Cyrus the Great, based on Isaiah 45:7. What do you think about that?
Well, it seems from just the me watching from a YouTube screen, it does seem like um, there is a certain type of character that Trump does have, where uh, he does see himself as very great and grandeur, and I thought it was fascinating, just as an observation, that he renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I thought it interesting. I didn't really understand what he really achieved with that, but once again, I'm an uninformed citizen as far as political understanding goes. So maybe there was some type of reasoning there, but yeah, I don't know.
How about this guy, Al Shara from Syria? He could be called the Assyrian, possibly from Micah 5:6. Could he be the Antichrist?
Well, it depends on how well Israel knows this guy. If they know him pretty well, it's better be pretty hard sell to be a friend of Israel. So,
Yeah,
and
I
also he's not
agree.
very powerful, I would assume, especially if I have not even known of this man until you brought him to my attention. So I would say that probably not, if I were to
Okay.
guess.
Okay. What about MBS meeting with Trump just recently here? Could he be the Antichrist?
Well, I think what isn't it Saudi Arabia a very rich nation? I think that he's a very rich individual, if I remember correctly. um, but I don't know what he could offer Israel. I don't know what Saudi Arabia could offer Israel, and not sure what Israel even thinks of a character like him. So I would say a little bit more likely than the previous candidate, but I don't know.
It's intriguing that it looks like the MBS, the crown prince. Now, his uncle runs the country of Saudi Arabia right now, but his uncle is 90 and dying. So MBS will take over, Mohammed bin Salman, and will join the Abraham Accords, but only with a real path to a two-state solution. Israel is not going to do a two-state solution, right, Caleb?
I have not kept up on where Israel is politically. As far as well, what I heard last I heard when I kept up on it was I think Netanyahu is not for one, but um, my concern is really not. I don't spend a lot of time defending Benjamin Netanyahu or the Knesset, because those are human beings who live human lives, and they're also politicians. And so when I consider that, my focus is defending what the text says about the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and descendant to the 12 tribes. So to me, the focus is really not, I don't have much of an educated uh, niche to offer any insight on that.
Okay. Now, there is a beast individual potentially, and there's also a beast system. Could the United Nations be the beast system?
Well, I can tell you that from the outside looking in, it seems, from what I've seen, the UN seems to be pretty hostile towards Israel.
Yes.
And so, but besides that, I don't know.
Okay. What about this guy, number 44?
Well, Obama seems to be a pretty powerful politician, from what I hear. Still has a lot. I think a lot of the other political commentators suggest that he has a credible influence in the Democratic Party. So, but I don't know what Barack Obama would have to offer to Israel. So I'm not convinced.
Okay. Excellent. What about these two guys? J.D. Vance as the Antichrist? I mean, obviously, he was the last man to see the Pope before he died. And then Marco Rubio on the right hand side. Any odds that they could be the Antichrist?
I don't know enough about these individuals and where they stand to even make an opinion. I don't know.
What about Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens cursing Israel literally every day of the week? Could they be Antichrist?
Well, it's fascinating how much influence Tucker Carlson has. He is a, I think, very dangerous figure theologically, and it's been fascinating to see some of the interviews he's done back to back, from the Ted Cruz interview to the Nick Fuentes interview. Just some of the differences of how he handled those. And Candace Owens is a fascinating individual as well. Um, you know, what I think happens is when people get to the point where they have to get more bombastic and more outlandish, it's a sign that fundamentally they're losing.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. What about any of these people? Could any of them be the Antichrist? So we've got Al Shara again. We've got the I'm blanking on the PA administration guy, Abbas, I think it is. MBS again, Trump, Netanyahu, many other people from that region. They're pushing for the Abraham Alliance or the Abraham Accords. Any chance that any of those guys could be the Antichrist?
It's a fascinating thing to consider. If Benjamin Netanyahu himself could be the Antichrist, it's a thought I never had somebody ask me about. Um, well, like I said, Benjamin Netanyahu is, of course, human, and the thing is about war is incredibly complex, and there's so many things that can happen. And it's so when people suggest these one-dimensional positions that is that one person's completely right and one person's completely wrong, it's I'm very very reluctant to make those dimensional statements. So I don't know.
Okay. My only comment on Bibi Netanyahu is that the Rebbe back in the 90s met with him and really thought that he would be the prime minister that hands the scepter off to the Messiah. And he made that statement, a bold statement, many, many years ago, 30 years ago. But it's just intriguing. There are multiple times, and I think Itzhak Kaduri also met with Bibi also. And so Itzhak Kaduri, if you're not aware of him, he lived to be about 108 years of age. He died about 2006, and he thought Bibi would hand the scepter off to the Messiah. So I would hope that it wouldn't be Bibi, but it could be, uh, I doubt if any of the other players are that type of a person. This is,
Can I ask you a question, Joel?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Do you know if Bibi Netanyahu has ever advocated publicly to restore the kingdom to Judah?
I know that he's reading Torah more and more. He's joining Torah studies, things like that, and that he's getting deeper into his faith. I don't know about that. I can't speak for him. I don't have access to Bibi through my friends, and I have Orthodox Jewish friends from Israel. I could ask them. I could ask.
I think it's I think it's an interesting question because like we know that fundamentally, like the tribe of Judah is supposed to be the monarch tribe, and so I think part of getting back to restoring or handing the kingdom to Messiah is, I think that we would have to start thinking about putting a descendant of Judah back into place.
Has to be. Yes, exactly. Yes. So this is Erdogan from Turkey. He's working very closely with the Syrian leader, al-Shura, and there is this confederation in the Ezekiel 38, 39 that seems like it's Turkish based, like the Caliphate, 400 years from 1517 to 1917. Could he be the Antichrist?
You said he's the Turkish president?
Yes.
Is he the one that I'm trying to remember, wasn't there some political figure that had a heart attack while they were talking bad about Israel? Or supposedly?
Yes, I did see that, but now I'm blanking on. Yeah, but you're correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this individual, so I would probably say no. I don't think he's very powerful.
It's the right location, but I don't think he's powerful enough to pull it off. And then, we've got Elon Musk. The other guys, Xi from China, I doubt it. MBS again. But Elon Musk, could he be the Antichrist?
Well, those Tesla designs are quite otherworldly. No, I was kidding. Well, he's a powerful man. But I don't know if he's powerful enough to inflict incredible political change. So I don't think you think so.
It's interesting to watch him and MBS getting together for an elegant dinner just the other day with Trump. So Elon loved Trump. They had a bromance, and then they broke apart, and now they're bromancing again. So it's interesting to see Elon back in the White House. Any of the European leaders, could they be the Antichrist? Any of these power players?
Well, none of them are as powerful as Trump, so I would think no.
He is the king of the world. Who's wearing the red tie? No one else can wear a power tie like that. It's interesting. He picks his ties for the occasions, doesn't he? What about this guy? Pope Bob from Chicago that is now running the Catholic Church. Could he be the Antichrist?
Well, it's fascinating within Catholicism them because I think I told you I was Protestant for much of my life, and so I never knew much of Catholicism. But I found out they have a doctrine called papal infallibility, and it essentially suggests that anything that the Pope says from his throne or whatever thing that he's sitting from, he has perfect vision of the Spirit, and if you don't agree with whatever he says, you're absolutely wrong. And like, wow, that's quite a doctrine for me to get under. um, you know, I mean, I don't think he has that much power, though, to be honest. I mean, he has power over people because of many of the doctrines that people seem to choose, but to me, the character that seems honestly the most likely is probably Donald Trump because of his incredible power that he has and some of the interesting conflicts going on and of what we think is happening in Israel and Gaza. So,
okay. What about this guy, King Charles? There are, and notice again the forehead, the right hand. There are three guys out there: Tim Cohen, Craig Bong, and Monty Judah, who is a friend of mine, saying that he the Antichrist candidate. Any thoughts about King Charles?
I think I'll just go back to I don't think he's powerful enough to pull it off. So, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Plus, he has cancer. I'm blanking on the exact not endocrine, but anyway, he has pancreatic cancer, so that's a bad sign. And then the 10 horns. I'm arguing that it's not European kings, that it's the 10 big tech billionaires, and that could they be part of the beast system? These big tech guys.
Oh, well, I mean, I would think you need someone to help you pull it off. They have incredible resources and do have some political influence. So possible.
Goodness, Larry Ellison, number two. So Bill Gates, we all know him. Larry Ellison runs Oracle. Oracle's an interesting name in itself, and he has access to all of the records in the White House now, and most of he is a cloud person. Unfortunately, about a third of his business is run through Chinese cloud technology, and so he's had some issues lately with that. But anyway, these men are gaining access to the data of the world, and they're building databases and cloud systems that could control us. I've been in software for years, and it was interesting from 2021 to 2023. I watched all these RFPs come through for the United Nations to build out huge databases of keeping track of people. So they have the databases in place, guys, from 4 years ago. Okay, and then this guy, Jared Kushner. Any thoughts about him?
Well, I think wasn't he an advisor to President Trump?
Oh, yeah. He set up the Abraham Accords when he worked for President Trump. Now he's a businessman doing the Abraham Accords again, but without any governmental control. No oversight.
Well, he's got a powerful position, basically being in the advisory sort of role to Trump, but of course his power is directly linked to Trump. So I would say no.
Okay, all right, good point. And then let's try to grab this question if I can get my mouse to work. I have so many problems with my mouse. Would you consider Judas twin Esau, and therefore the AC could be from that bloodline? So I don't know if you've checked out the rabbinic comments on Esau being Rome. Have you ever heard that stated by Rabbi Doron?
No, I haven't heard that before. No.
That's a standard commentary from my friends that are Lubavitchers, that Esau is is Rome, and Rome will be difficult for the Jews in the end days. So they've been preaching that for many years. So just it's interesting. I don't know how I feel about it because I have many wonderful Catholic friends. They're pro-life. I'm pro-life, but yet I don't like the Pope at all because I feel he's a communist.
I would think that perhaps the gospel writers would also have indicated that Rome would have been Edom, or someone would have made a connection that Rome was Edom.
Yes.
But I haven't heard that. So my thought is, unless I see the evidence, I don't think it exists.
Yeah. The rabbis preach that it's in the midrash, I believe, and I can't remember when they codified it. Probably 1,000 years ago, that Rome is Edom as far as they're concerned, and Rome has not been a good friend to the Jews over the years. All right, well, we're pretty much all done here. So let's pull us back to this slide, and then so this is fun. So once again, Caleb, how do the people find you?
Yeah, so I run a channel, Caleb D. Wilson on YouTube. If you guys have any inquiries, any questions, podcasts like this, you're more than welcome to email me at calebdwilsonofficial@gmail.com, and we can set something up. I would be more than happy to answer your questions, anything related to understanding a Jewish Messiah and how we fit into that gospel. So
Great. Okay, so you have YouTube, your YouTube channel. You have your relationship with Doron Katz, and you're an active, busy guy, and you have a full-time job too, right? And you'll be getting up at about 6 hours, right?
oh yeah, I'm gonna probably be hitting the hay right after this. But yeah, and I enjoy what I do, and to me, like I said over the course of this podcast, the truth is the most important thing, and we can't. And peace is important too. We have to get back to what the truth is in Scripture, because that is going to help bring.
That's a good way to end it. So everybody, thank you. Be blessed for watching this show tonight, and bless Caleb for coming on the show and working so hard. So this will do it then, and I'm going to, if I can get my mouse to work, we're going to end the stream now. Thank you and good night.